I agree with that tonight. Jimmy, yeah. I'll ask you, because you made this point. I want to get into this a little bit, that they shouldn't upgrade, that they shouldn't go all in on a trade this year. But you also don't
completely. Are we going into this right now?
Bobby wants to rally the crowd back to his side.
Well,
okay? He's getting beat up on the Rob thing. He wants to bring the people back. Use the TPE.
This is connected as well, though, because Jimmy, you're saying no big trade this year. Wait for it, but also don't sell. Don't trade Kemba. Definitely. Don't trade Thompson.
Correct. You can't trade Kemba. He's untradeable.
I don't agree with that, but my point is, if you want more Rob, why not trade Thompson, sell off some pieces here, and open up those minutes for him by trading a Thompson and a Tice?
That's not selling off to me. I mean, I think you could trade Thompson and bring in somebody that could help you, like a wing or somebody. So I don't consider that a sell-off at all. What I said in our group chat, and this was an argument that we had, I think, yesterday, is that if you can't make a trade that makes you better in your eyes than the Sixers or the Nets, or makes you a top contender, then you don't waste the TPE and you don't sell your assets for a panic move trade or a quick fix trade that you think might get you out of this slump that you're in, because that's all you have. Once you use it, it's gone. Once you give those picks away and that TPE away, it's gone. So if your other alternative is, hey, we have the guys that we have, let's bring in what I think I said was, if they can make a small level trade, shore up a bench role. I think Thad Young was the guy I mentioned. Go ahead and do that and ride or die with this crew for the rest of the year. And then if you're Danny Ainge, you're in a much better position to improve. You have a lot more answers on where this roster is at. You have a lot more suitors. You have a lot more teams that are willing to make a deal, because at the deadline, you only have a handful, and you're not trading from a position of power. You're on the opposite end. You're begging for help at this point, because you want to see if you can make a run here. So if I'm Danny Ainge or Mike Zarin, and I would be stunned if they disagree with this, I'm not burning up the phone lines right now trying to drastically improve or change my team. And I'm certainly not selling, because when you sell, you just set such a bad,
You're certainly not selling. You're not selling.
You're not bad enough to sell. But
you're not selling. You're fighting for a playoff spot, and you're hoping to catch fire late. You're not selling.
Exactly. And you're saying, well, if one of these temes, one of their players,
it's not
goes
either
down,
or.
We're still good enough to roll with.
I completely disagree.
What do you disagree with, though? Like, what is it that you disagree with?
Everything.
So you were saying make a bad trade for the sake of making a trade?
No, I think the position they're in asset-wise mandates that they're going to have to be extra aggressive. And I've talked about this with all my packages. Marcus Smart for John Collins, 4 firsts for Vucevic, 3 firsts for Gordon. They have to get aggressive here if they want a guy, not only because of the trade market, but because of the competition and the lack of assets that they have compared to other teams right now. So you either need to make a aggressive move like that to actually get something that changes things. I don't want a Thad Young. It's not going to change much at all. Or go in the other direction. There are only 2 games out of that 4th lottery spot, I believe, at this point. Maybe look for a suitor for Kemba. Maybe look for, to move on to Thompson.
That's not happening, Bobby. No one's taking that Kemba contract.
No one is trading for Kemba. And in fact, we had a report earlier, what we were circulating again on our group chat, that every GM hates Ainge for trying to pass off damaged goods with Walker. No one wants Kemba Walker and his salary and his health condition. He is legitimately untradeable unless you take a crap contract in return. He's not an asset. You can't get something back. A tanking team is not giving away an asset to take on 2 more years of Kemba. That's going backwards for them. Why would someone do that?
You're talking about trades that don't exist. You're assuming
they don't exist. They're fantasy trades.
No one has ever said that he's an option for the Celtics to begin with. If he was on the table, what makes you think the Celtics would have the best package even available for him if he even was an option, which he isn't?
Who's that?
You're talking Vucevic. He's the only player that I think the Celtics could acquire this year that might actually help them this year, and might be somebody that I want to hang on to for a couple seasons. Everybody else is a complete risk. You want to trade Marcus Smart and whoever for John Collins, a player that you risking that you first of all you don't know what he's going to provide to the team, because it's a risk midseason to make that move. Then you have to pay him a ton of money, and then You've mortgaged your entire future in this current roster with this one player.
It looks like you're risking the roster right now the way they're going, because you're
not.
At some point.
How would getting someone like Thad Young risk the roster? Like I think the low risk, high reward is Danny Ainge written all over it. Like I think that's the more likely thing that's going to happen.
Is that going to change things all that much though when we look at what's wrong with this team right now?
You're only thinking about this
season. In season. That's the thing. You might not. Because
I'm not only thinking about this season. Vucevic signed many years. Collins.
No, what I'm saying is, Bobby, in order to make the trade now, while you're competing with a bunch of other teams, you have to do a massive overpay at this point because that's how deadline deals work. Versus waiting into the offseason where, as Jimmy mentioned earlier, you have everybody you can trade with at that point. But right now, it's buyers and sellers. And the amount of sellers out there are going to be very few, and the amount of buyers are going to be very high, which means it's going to be an extremely competitive market, which means you're going to pay 1.5 times what you normally would to improve yourself right now. So if you're willing to give away 5 first-round picks, Harden.
What do they need picks for? What do they need picks for? They use 18 picks in 5 years. I trade 7 right now for someone. Screw them all.
James Harden is one of the 3 best players in basketball. Didn't cost this. You're going to give 5 picks for Vucevic and current assets and empty the war chest there. I just don't know that that's the right.
It's a panic move. It's the definition of a panic move.
That's going to be the cost acquisition in the offseason too. I mean, I'll tell you now.
Yeah,
but Bobby, do you do a panic move when your 2 all-stars are locked in for 2+ years? You know what I mean? Like I don't know.
I don't think it's a panic move. It's a necessary move that they didn't make in the offseason, and we all said, "Oh, they'll make it in the season to fix things."
They can't undo that.
We didn't all say that. We did not all say that one bit. We did not say that. In fact, what me and John have been saying from the start is that tamper your expectations with this TPE, because everyone just assumes that they can just hand this literal nothingness to a team. And
that's my point. You need to be aggressive in what you offer. And the only thing
aggressive isn't going to change the fact that this is what you have. You can be aggressive as you want. It doesn't matter. In the offseason, I mean, you're talking about at the deadline, maybe 1/3 of the NBA willing to listen. At the offseason, theoretically, every single team is willing to listen and make deals, and they're on the phones trying to improve their team. You have a better idea of where you are as a team. Contracts coming up the books, coming on the books. And if you can make a better decision based around the future of your team, whether or not Kemba Walker is included or not. You might even have a better chance of trading him in a package than if he has a full season of health and, the shooting ticks up a notch or 2 here. So, again, the rest of the season, if they ever decide to play Rob, maybe he becomes an asset worth more in the offseason. So it makes more sense, and you might actually have more to trade with if you hold on to these guys and just hope that this team turns it around a little bit. Maybe you pick up a guy at the trade deadline. Maybe you pick up a buyout candidate, and the talent is there with this Celtics team. It's not like they're not a talented team. They're not playing together right now. But if you don't want to make a massive trade that's a panic move, only to have Brooklyn run the table in the playoffs anyways, and then you're sitting there with nothing to do in the offseason.
The other problem, Bobby, is I don't know that any of these guys that we're talking about are available.
Right?
And that's the other thing is there's a strange fantasy land around the Celtics trades here of like, how about this guy? And we're talking about people
about him?
Until very recently you're talking about Julius Randle. The guy's a freaking all-star, and the Knicks are half game behind you in the playoff hunt. Like, what are we talking about here? That guy's unattainable. Harrison Barnes, Sacramento also, again, they are in a little losing tailspin right now. Why would they trade him? You have to, like I said, the analogy for me
that's why you get aggressive.
Walking up to a random house.
What does that even mean?
I know you like living here, but can I give you a bunch of money to move? These guys.
That's my point, John. My point is you get aggressive to entice these teams to make moves. When I threw out that Smart Collins deal to a Hawks writer, he said no brainer for both teams, and I feel like that's what the kind of trade it is for both teams.
That's not aggressive.
The Hawks writer said no brainer. What does that tell you about Collins?
That's a coin flip. Like that's, I don't know that makes you better. It's aggressive in the sense that you're doing something for the sake of something, but it is almost panicky to make a move that you don't actually think is going to make you better.
No, it's not panicky to offer fair value for a trade. And this is what, like, I thought you guys didn't like this about Ainge, that he was just waiting for the perfect deal to come all around. Especially with his asset base right now, there is no perfect deal, and there's probably no fair value deal for him right now. He has to pay more right now for deals he didn't make in the past. And that includes your Turner one that you want him to do so bad, and maybe that was the deal. You know, like ultimately if they do nothing and stand pat, I'm going to be right on your train.
That's what I was gonna say. We were giving him crap for not being aggressive before the season started. You know, when
not
you had the trade on the table, whether
it is the same because they move it forward.
It's not.
You went out and signed Thompson and Teague. Like these are the moves that we're questioning. You know,
it's not the same. We were criticizing Danny for not blinking, thinking he had more leverage than he did. It wasn't lack of aggression. We thought he misread the situation, which is they're going to come back to me because there's nothing else here. Maybe he thought there wasn't a Charlotte deal, didn't believe in New York, thought eventually I'll be able to squeeze a little more out of Indiana because it's really the only dance partner out there, and I know it. And he might have misread it. We don't fully know. Charlotte might have been there the whole time, and Indiana might not have been real. And Danny might, in fact, have known there's nothing I can do. He doesn't want to come here, and he's going where the money is, and it's there. And he might have known that too. So we don't know that. Where we've chastised Danny in the past is hoarding assets that could have been spent on a slam dunk, okay? If a slam dunk presents itself, you know, like we were talking about young Jalen and a draft pick for Kawhi, like a star, okay? And at the time, people are like, that's a bona fide star. Are you telling me you're not going to trade who knows what assets down the road, the Brooklyn pick, the Memphis pick for that seems asinine. But when you're talking about players like Harrison Barnes or even Vucevic, who's having a great year for
All-star,
absolutely everything imaginable, you are now overpaying perhaps a little bit. And,
no, it's not the same because different teams have different situations and different needs. The Magic are an awful team that need multiple shots.
I don't know that they need a bunch of. I also don't have any faith that anybody wants a bunch of picks in the 20s because, as I said,
it's different now. The draft's much different, and the Celtics aren't in the 20s right now. They're what, teens?
And now they are. But at the end of the day,
when you trade for Vucevic, you assume that they're going to remain in the teens. That would totally make the trade.
Maybe that's how the other team feels about it.
Again, look, any deal since we don't know what the deal is, you might see something and say that was right. I think the point Jimmy is making, Bobby, is that you can't just say, if he doesn't do something, I'm going to be furious because it's going to be a throwaway. It has to be the right deal.
Well, think of the cost.
Player has to make you better and can't be panicky just based on trying to salvage this season. That's not the most important thing. When you have Tatum and Brown long term, you have to look at how am I going to make myself better during this period of time that I have these guys. And that could be recognizing there's nothing to be done this year, but I could really make a big splash in the offseason. I might have
that was the other side of my argument. If you think that's what's going on here, then be patient with Brad. I don't want to see a panic Brad firing. Sell off some pieces to make the team a little bit worse, get young guys more minutes like you want to, and take a step back. Maybe go into the lottery. Like, if you're going to tank this year, don't just make it
tanking.
You're not tanking and you're not selling.
Wouldn't a first-round exit be a tanked year, essentially?
It's not an extreme. That's the point is you
have to in this league. You have to be one or the other in this league.
You're not. It's not. You're just going to – there's no difference between drafting 14 and 17, okay? You're just going to play the best that you can. And sometimes, for most teams, there's no deadline deals. You just play out the string, and that's that. It sucks if you're a team stuck in the middle with no hope of ever climbing. Yeah. You're an also-ran always. You're not that if you're the Celtics. It could be a down year, but just like Philly had a down year last year, okay? And now they're in the tops of the Eastern Conference. You can be the Celtics with these two stars and jump right back into it next year.
Already.
Right.
The best way to do that would be to have a great pick to either use or flip. So, again, I don't want to sit in the middle here. I don't want a Thad Young that's not going to move the needle at all more than like 1 or 2 games. I don't want to lose in the first round, which is what this is looking like right now. I'd rather
But
drop.
that's fine. If it happens, it happens. Again, if you're a GM and you're team building, you're going to look at a 10-year window and you're going to say, I want to move forward 7 of those years, and 3 of those years I might stay flat. But you can't always, like, this is something like the Red Sox used to do. They would freak out, chase whatever, recognize our starting pitching sucked, and then go overpay for John Lackey. Recognize our offense is bad, and then go overpay for Pablo Sandoval and Hanley Ramirez.
And I agree with you.
When you do dumb things like that and you react to the now without looking at the whole picture, you really shortchange yourself. You're looking at a larger picture than just this season. If there's something to be done this season that makes you better now and in the future, you do it. You only oversell and overpay for a championship if you know you're knocking on that door. And that's why Jimmy said is, even if you make that deal, you don't know if you can overcome Philly and the Nets. So why overpay to make yourself marginally better and lose in the second round? It doesn't make sense. You don't have to build a team for the long run.
That's my argument. And if you don't do that, if you can't do that, sell and go the other way. The worst thing you can do with this year is sit in the middle. Like, that would be devastating now and in the future.
What are you selling that you're getting back value?
Kemba, Thompson,
you can't
Tice.
trade Kemba.
What are you getting for Tristan Thompson and Daniel Tice that's going to make those guys have more value to you than anything you're getting in trade?
I disagree with that all year long.
Definitely went over 200 text messages. Definitely. Just want to add that.
Well, we need to hash this out. Joe Sway, because these guys aren't listening to me at all.
Yeah. All right, well, go ahead. What's your point? I thought you want me to.
You're just.
I don't think you guys realize that they are 2 games out of the 4th place in the lottery.
Selling the way you're saying it actually doesn't get you anything. If you offered,
I'm not talking about getting a Brooklyn haul for those guys. I'm talking about freeing up minutes for young guys, sinking a little lower.
First of all, the 3 of you guys are completely not on the same page when it comes to the value of these guys. So whether we're talking Kemba or any of the 3 bigs, you're never going to get past this conversation because Bobby has a value that's different than what you have for those 3 guys.
No, I'm not saying you're going to get a great haul for those guys. I'm saying clear them out, take some extra losses now, get in a much better draft position, play young guys like you guys want. You want Neesmith, you want Rob. That's the way to get there. It's not going to be
and do that to Brown and Tatum.
Right. What are they doing to them right now? They're 15 and 16.
You can't send a message that this season is lost to these guys. You cannot do that. Absolutely not. You don't do that with this. You tank when you have nothing. You tank on the old Celtics.
That's when Jalen
this is how guys demand trades. You cannot tank with stars like this. Absolutely not.
They're already tanking,
demand to be shipped out of town. You absolutely can't do it. You have to remove that from your thinking. You can't tank with these guys.
So I mean, what's the difference?
It's not worth going up, 3 or 4 draft picks by totally pissing off.
It's not 3 or 4. It's going from like 17 to 4. The way the standings are set up right now.
We're talking about the lottery or non-lottery. If the difference between an 8th seed and missing the lottery is a couple of picks theoretically. I mean, you're not going to hit in the lottery at the 14th. So it's just not worth what John just said. Putting that sour taste in those players' mouth, getting them pissed off at you.
There's a sour taste in there now. That's my point. I would have never advocated for this.
Bobby, that's their own doing. I mean, that's largely on the players. If Danny Ainge goes out there and purposely makes them worse by selling, then what does that tell the players? Well, why would they go out there and give an effort? Why would they care about the organization or winning? Right now, it's their own doing for the record that they have. And you can't tell me you're completely writing off the idea that they can't get better by adding some depth. I mean, it wasn't that long ago where that's all you thought they needed, and a lot of people thought they needed. Bringing in a guy like Thad Young, and I'm not saying it's going to happen, but bringing in a guy like that, then getting Marcus Smart back, then getting Kemba Walker back to regular minutes, this isn't a team that is even remotely close to tanking. You'd have to do so much to get to tank mode and to make it worth your while. It's just, you don't tank with 2 young stars, all-stars literally on your team. You just don't do that.
You just play out the string. If the trade is there, you make it.
Play out the season.
You don't. That's it.
If they play this out, they're going to go 500, lose round
Bobby,
one,
you know
and
you
be in
can
the
play
same
players
trade
without
position
trading
next year.
people, right? You know, at any point in time, Brad can play the kids, so to speak. You can view this as a developmental season with possible benefits and payout in the end. We've been saying do it now. You know where Semi and Grant and Javante are getting you. So start building up Robin and Neesmith now and Romeo if and when he comes back.
Isn't that the same
hopes
thing?
that you catch that wave with the 15 games left in the season heading into the playoffs, where you start to click and you might enter the playoffs as a 6 or 7 seed, but you're operating as highly functional level as you have all year. That's the long-term goal here. You might get there with this team. You still might get there and actually be able to beat some teams in the playoffs. You're not selling parts.
That's a possibility of selling and opening up those spots too, because realistically, I know how bad you want Brad to drop Thompson's minutes down to 7 and Rob's up to 33. It's never going to happen. So you have to make it happen by moves. You have to make some adjustments here. Maybe you bring in some players that are a little bit worse but fit better for those kind of players. You absolutely have to trade Tice by the end of this year. They cannot, and I know you don't think he's worth anything, John, but to let him go at the end of the year for nothing.
They're going to sign him for 2 and 12 at the end of the year. We keep talking about this. You're saying he's an $18 million player. Daniel Tice is coming back at whatever Danny decides that. Danny's going to pick up the phone and say, "Do you want to?" And he's going to say yes.
Yeah.
So that brings us back to being in the same.
Would you like to?
Next
Yes.
year.
Yes. Very much. Yes. Thank you. That's how that negotiation is going to go.
So even if you're right about that, they're back in the same spot in the offseason. They're going to have to be aggressive when it comes to making the trade offers. Fine. They're going to be past a 500 season, it looks like, losing in round 1. All the things you mentioned as possible downturns of doing stuff now are already happening, and it'll be the same thing later. This team's not figuring it out as they're constructed. They need to get aggressive to get better, or downgrade, go young, and maybe that works or something else. No, I don't think Thad Young is
different players. You don't have to sell. You don't have to sell. You can at any point in time try different things.
No, and there's various degrees of it. You're right about that. Like they could keep Kemba and work that out and funnel in Thompson, Tice, however they can, with some like maybe a single pick or second round picks and change some pieces and parts here. I just don't think that's changing things all that much. We'll see, though. That probably is going to be what's going to happen. I think you have the right idea. It
probably is going to happen that way. So just be prepared.
Be prepared. And again, the TPE is fine, but I think the
TPE might expire if you bring it to the off season.
No, you haven't. You have into the off season. You have a full year.
It's a calendar year, though.
Full year.
No, but if you get to the off season and there's no moves then, or it's too expensive, then what are you going to do? Just let it expire?
If you're going to do it to get 2 bench players that might make you marginally better now and miss an opportunity to turn it into something real, you have to weigh whether or not that was the right play. That's what it's going to come down to. If you're getting a couple of guys that are definitely upgrades over what you have, but still not enough to put you over the hump, and you missed an opportunity potentially to try to do something more.
You have to be aggressive to actually get something out of this, and it doesn't matter if it's now or in the offseason.
I actually think what you're calling aggressive is settling. I think it's settling to take whatever scraps you can get with that. For the sake of doing it, I think it's dead opposite.
So what's your dream? What's your dream? Because you don't think they can get Beal. You don't think they have assets. So why? I don't get what you're holding out for.
It's not a dream. This is kind of what I've been saying from the beginning.
They also can't get Beal within the offseason. They have to do it now.
People understand that the TPE isn't really valuable unless you put together other things with it that are enticing. The TPE is just matching money, but the trade you make, the TPE has no actual value other than evening out the money in the deal. The trade you make is with what you give up in addition to the TPE. And since their assets are limited, there's not a lot that they can give up right now, other than throwing every first-round pick that could possibly do it and any young player on the roster that they think is worth developing right now for maybe one player that makes them a little better. I don't know.
You just explained my argument.
I don't think so.
That's what aggressive is. All the picks, all the players you can think of. That's what I mean by get aggressive with this. I'm not disillusioned at all thinking they can get Vucevic for free. I said it might cost 4 first-round picks, 5 first-round picks. That's all you have of value. And those are a value. A losing team wants extra picks. Look at the Pelicans. Look at the Thunder. They have like 50 picks right now. That's my point.
That's a crazy trade. I mean, that's not aggressiveness. That's just stupidity.
All right, so what is it 3? Is it 2? I don't know what the right number is, but whatever you think is actually going to get it done is the number it needs to be.
We don't know. We're throwing around.
I don't know what else to say.
Now. 5 first-round picks, 7th first-round picks. We have no idea. It's funny.
No, I don't know. I don't know the number you're about.
Guys, that's what's been going on in the last 24 hours.
I made my point, so I have nothing else to say on the topic.
Right.
At this
We're
point.
going in circles. The point of it is the right deal that has value, everybody is in favor of. The deal for the sake of a deal, just because you feel this team needs to get better, might not be the right one. Or it might be better in the offseason.
No, but there's a clock. There's a clock. Marcus Smart's on a clock. The TP's on a clock. If the stuff expires.
If there's nothing at the deadline that makes sense, then you hold on to it and you hope you turn it into something better later. That's all we're saying. Everybody would love to see them flip it at the deadline for something that makes them better this year, for sure. If it's not there, you roll with it. I don't think it's a necessity. It would be great if it happens, and if not, you punt it to next year. This is every
I'd rather
sport.
than hold it.
This is every sport and every deadline. The assets you have don't go away. They're there. You can do.
Yes, they do. Your TP disappears. Smart's contract expires after next year.
You roll it into the offseason and you see if you can make it work there.